any wound. It can be as small as a tick bite. This fly can come in, it'll lay its eggs, and its larvae, we also call them maggots, basically drill down like a screw into this wound and really kind of eat the animal alive. My name is Erika Machtinger, and I'm Associate Professor of Entomology. The latest on the screwworm is that the USDA and Texas health officials and veterinarians and entomologists at Texas A&M and livestock producers are working really hard to get the word out for folks to make sure that they're checking their animals. There are infestations in Texas, but they have set up over the last several years a playbook, and it's working. They're executing it. They're creating their infestation zones, and the biggest thing is trying to buy us enough time to get our management method up and running. The way that the USDA has set up what they call their playbook is when an animal becomes infested and it's reported, they set up a quarantine zone around that. And Texas has a lot of resources, so they actually will station officers on roads, so they know that those animals are not moving. And they'll come in and treat, they'll identify, make sure it's screwworm. So they have an infested zone, and then they have this extra surveillance zone. Well, they will set up traps for the fly. So they're looking to make sure, well, if there's any flies in this area, we're gonna try and catch them. And that flight range, or the trapping zone is set up based on the flight range of the fly. Once no more animals are infested in that zone, it'll become inactive. But those are the zones that are of most concern to other states. So like our state, Pennsylvania, set up a quarantine zone restriction. So we can't move animals from restricted zones to Pennsylvania. The screwworm is actually a fly. So it's a blowfly. It's a group of flies that we see very commonly. They are metallic green or blue. We see them on flowers. They're important pollinators. They're important decomposers. The difference with the New World screwworm, and it's not new, it's been here, it's native to the Americas, but the difference is that it feeds on living tissue. And that's what makes it such a problem. It gets its name because of the larvae. They look a little different from other fly larvae, and when they actually feed on the living tissue, they go head first, and they feed that way with their posterior end sticking up, and they have these spines going around their body that look like a screw. So folks named it based on what they saw, which wasn't super inventive, but makes sense. So it's not a worm, it's actually a fly larva or maggot, but when they burrow down, they kind of go down like a screw. And so it can be quite dangerous for animals if it isn't found. If it's found and you can remove the larvae and treat the wound, they're fine, animals recover. But it can be really challenging for folks who have horses or cattle being born, and there's an umbilical cord, and so the fly can lay eggs in that, or a tick bite, as I mentioned, or if you're castrating or dehorning, all of those are potential entry sites for the fly, not to mention any other wounds they may get. So that's the real challenge with this fly, is that they can really go from a small wound to a dead animal pretty quickly, and so we want to keep eyes on the animal as much as we can. And the fly is not really picky, so if there's a lot of animals that tend to get injured or have wounds, they're going to infest that animal. But horses, swine, dogs, those are all other animals that we see the fly in a lot. We imagine we're going to see it a lot in deer and feral hogs in the south and southeast and southwest. But it really doesn't discriminate. With people, it's a little bit... the fly will still do the same thing. It'll still eat living tissue, but people tend to notice when that happens. So if you have a wound that hurts a lot or it's moving, folks tend to go to the doctor and get that sorted out. It's the folks that are maybe unhomed or that may have some sort of chemical impairment for whatever reason that may not have that same response that we worry about. So the fly is a really warm, loving fly. So it does really well at temperatures around 80, 85 degrees. So that's why we see it a lot in Texas. And then it spreads. Once the weather warms up, it'll spread, if it was left to its own devices, into New Mexico and Oklahoma and spread east to the more southern states. It doesn't really like to cross water. So the Mississippi is kind of a big barrier for this fly. So we think a lot of the travel into the southeast in the past was animal movement. It is possible they can ride weather patterns as well, so hurricanes or strong storms, but the fly itself doesn't move a whole lot, so it tends to move through animal movement. If it gets to the north, so say an infested animal moves from an infested area to the north, the fly could potentially live here. There are documented cases of this fly all the way into the Dakotas and New Jersey, but by the winter, the cold temperatures will kill it. The summer is going to be a crucial point for monitoring purposes for screwworm across all states, and every state veterinarian and Department of Ag has been intimately involved in understanding what the playbook is in Texas. They have a weekly call that they discuss what's going on. So every state has been kept very up to date with what's going on. What hasn't happened as much as the information getting to producers in states where we don't expect to see the fly, but we still potentially could see the fly. And the key message is really not to worry. We don't want you to be worried about every fly that you see, but if you do have animals, check them for wounds. If you do find something suspicious, report it. Don't hesitate to report it. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, every state's Department of Agriculture is setting up processes to identify those flies and make sure that we're not seeing anything that we didn't expect to see. So it is very important to just maintain really good husbandry practices and not worry, but keep a careful eye on your animals.